everybody, it's your boy Versace Stunner here. We're here with another special episode of Horror Nights. Tonight, we have director, producer, and writer Adam Raynes with us. Welcome to the show.
Oh man, I don't know if you can see or hear me. I can't hear you, but I can see you.
Oh,
I see you nodding, so you can probably hear me.
o-
Here, let me see if I can hop out and hop back in.
okay. We can hear him now. We're going to talk with him. He's made some short films, and we're going to talk about those films. Let's see. Sometimes we have little issues with the mic. But we did mic checks on my end before the episode, so I'm guessing it's not on my end. Okay, let's see.
I can hear you now.
Now you can hear me.
Yeah,
Great.
perfect.
Perfect. Welcome to the show.
Yeah. Thank you for
To
having
have
me
you
on
on.
here.
Now, I was just recently watching, what you sent me the link, which I thought was a very cute movie, by the way. Um, is that your first and only? Is that your latest?
Cookies for Christmas. Excuse me, is just the latest. I've probably between music videos and other short films, probably over like 10. So a lot of them are on the YouTube channel. Um, some of the music videos I have linked on my YouTube, but they're going to be on the different bands' YouTubes and different channels.
Yeah. No, so you've always been kind of into making, creating videography and stuff like that, playing with the
Yeah,
camera. It's fun, I have to say. I like to do short videos of myself, and even the hard stuff, even the boring stuff becomes fun at some point, like grading and making things look cool, and playing around with even light and texture and darkness and shadow. It becomes an art in itself. It can change the way you look at a film. I was talking to somebody earlier about, the Christmas cookies and just how you used a lot of reds and greens, and it felt really like a Hallmark film. It had a good color grade, a warm feeling to it. It made me feel, like I was watching like a nice family film. Had I not, known about it or, known anything else. And it was kind of a good homage to a lot of like the films I grew up with. In sense of, things like Tales from the Crypt and such, where they had, like a deranged Santa,
hmm
you
yeah.
know.
Yeah, we've got that a few times. People tell us that it reminds them of Tales from the Crypts. Certain other Christmas horror films. I think when you're talking about Christmas horror, you can only really go in so many directions. So Santa, I think, oftentimes does end up being the big bad. In
He
our
does.
case, was it the real Santa? Not really. It's just some guy broke out of a psych hospital, and we do get questions, about more of his origins, why he's doing it, things like that. But this is a short film, so it's it's hard to kind of explore all those things. If we ever had an opportunity to make a feature film, that's obviously where we could kind of really unpack a lot of
You
that.
could really play with it on that, and kind of delve back into a story or make it, a little bit more. But for what it was, it fits perfectly. It's clear cut. Someone escapes, someone's crazy, someone's out there killing,
Hmm.
someone's
Yeah.
someone's killed. um, but I'm a big fan of Christmas horror. I think it's one of my, favorite genres in horror. Over the years, we've gone to a lot of kind of different Christmas films like Krampus and others that have kind of pushed that realm. We've had the classic ones like Black Christmas and stuff, and even movies like Dead End, which is kind of like a Christmas movie, with the kind of like ghost feelings and paranormal shit going on. It's become more of a creepy holiday. Even Terrifier 3 went the Christmas route, which I think now has kind of pushed it into mainstream as well too. Everybody's now, got this Art the Clown with the Santa hat and so forth. But again, just having it be, and I think the coolest, for me, I thought the coolest thing wasn't even, the kills were cool. I did like the candy cane, but the ending, them being wrapped up under
Oh
the
yeah.
tree, I think that's just so much fun because you have you have the innocent kid coming in, not knowing anything that's going on, meanwhile, their parents are wrapped in the tree. It's like, we're not gonna see the horror on their faces, but you can think about it. You can kind of wonder about it.
Yeah, I think sometimes that's kind of the route you want to go is leaving people with that lingering image, those lingering thoughts, letting them kind of piece some things together themselves. And talking about the rapping, and that's kind of one of the. I think sometimes when I write, because I also wrote the script for Cookies for Christmas. Sometimes when I write, I have very strong visual imagery of things I want to do, and then it's a matter of kind of like connecting those pieces. So yeah, them spoilers being wrapped up at the end was one of the things I knew I kind of wanted to get to at
Where'd
some
you,
point. It's just a matter of having it all connected.
like you said, you went from music videos. What kind of inspired you to jump into this realm, or to make a short horror film?
Well, I've always been a big fan of comedy. Always been a big fan of horror. So making films. I think so much it's not just what I want to do. You just get this strike of inspiration, like a lightning strike of inspiration, and it compels you to crank out a script or develop an idea. So, Cookies for Christmas was much the same in that vein. And every time I start finishing projects, I start itching for that next strike of lightning. And sometimes it causes me to go into maybe a slump, where you're just not feeling creative. You go into like that creative rut, and you're really wanting to force yourself to be creative, and it can be difficult. So, um, music videos, some of the music videos have, I'd say, almost little bits of horror elements to them. Some of the ones I've done. There's some music videos that are much on the other end of the spectrum, much happier. But it's kind of fun to experiment and kind of bounce between different genres, different ideas, and just experiment. And I think that leads to growth, finding out what works for you. So I don't
Yeah,
know
and then
if
also,
I.
I mean, a lot of people, I mean, even though we might like, I mean, me personally, I love horror, but I mean, in general, people in general aren't one trick ponies. They can do multiple things. There's directors that have made multiple genres of films that are all successful. I mean, even like Peter Jackson had his fun with horror, that he created a bunch of great horror films. And then he went on to do even bigger movies that were just blockbuster films. But everybody has that potential to kind of play with this. So it's kind of fun to see where the creativity can go. And I get what you mean about the slump. I do a lot of writing, I do a lot of filming and making short films and such, and even episodes. And sometimes it's just hard to find that inspiration. I find the easiest place to find it is just submerge myself in a horror convention. Just go there, spend the weekend there, meet other horror fans, meet guests, and just talk with people. But my issue is I'll get inspiration, but it won't be like I'll get it like 3 in the morning. I wake up and it's like I got an idea, so I'm off to the computer. 4:30 in the morning, I'm already like writing a script. I'm halfway in, or I'm editing videos. And it's like people like my wife will wake up at like 7. What are you doing? I'm like, oh, I've been up since like 3. I got an idea.
I give you kudos for that. I sometimes feel, inspiration in the middle of the night. Maybe I have a dream, maybe it's a nightmare, whatever it might be, and I'm thinking like, oh, I gotta write this idea down. So like, I jot it on my phone or something real quick, and then I wake up and I'm reading it back, and it just makes no sense. I'm like, this is not gonna work. So I give you kudos that you can
Sometimes it
actually
depends.
dive into those ideas and start developing them.
If it's something that's not gonna stick or bite, but if it's something that I think in my head is genius, and it could even be like I'll be laying in bed and I watch a lot of films at night, and I can see something that'll just get me thinking about something I did that I want to incorporate or use or do something. So I'll just get up and go do it. Um,
I'm
and
very
I
much
wake
the
up
same.
early, so sometimes I wake up early and I'm thinking and just doing nothing but just reading through the day, and I'm thinking something like, okay, getting up, going.
Hmm.
And because I don't want to miss it, I don't want to lose that spark. Because sometimes it is hard to gain it back. The real life interventions veins with a lot of creative processes, unfortunately, just things in general. You go about your day, your creativity level can start up here, and then little bits and pieces, not even out of your control, can knock it all down. So by the end of the day, you feel kind of gray. You don't really feel so inspirational. And so you got to kind of find that inspiration either now that you've exhausted all your outside resources, you got to either find it from within or kind of just let it almost reset itself. And that's the hardest part, I think, is letting it reset because you're sitting in limbo. You don't have no juice to flow. You're not doing anything. You feel lazy. You feel unaccomplished because you're used to doing something constantly. But in reality, you're doing something good for yourself. You're letting yourself rejuvenate.
And I appreciate you saying those things. I was at a film festival earlier in 2025, and I went to one of the filmmaker panels, and I basically alluded to this slump, this creative slump I get in between projects. And you just really get down on yourself because, like you said, you're so used to doing things that when you're not doing anything, you feel not yourself. And they more or less kind of dismissed the idea or the feeling. I don't know if I don't know if they were sincere or if they don't want to admit that they feel that sort of thing too. But it's nice to have other people acknowledge it. So thank you for that.
Well, yeah, no, and I think anybody with that is creative has a slump. I don't think anybody can just be 24/7 creative. I mean, even great authors, directors, writers, Stephen King even, they've all gone through periods where there's been no content or they've used other
Yeah.
works to fill content, but it hasn't been great content or knockout content. And I think that happens even with, amateur filmmakers, indie filmmakers. You might get a great film. You might, your last one did great. It might have knocked it out the park. Your next one, maybe you won't think it's that good. Maybe it won't be that good. But it's not because of anything. It's just because sometimes you just can't hit home runs every time you're up at bat. It's very rare to even do that. So many people have like a list of movies, but they're known for five or
Yeah.
six. And then you go and watch their other movies. They're not as they're good because you're a fan of the director, you're a fan of their style, but you know that they're not as good as the other films that made it bigger.
Right.
But I still tell people all the time, and even myself, just whatever it is, put it out there. You have the idea. If it's a completed, finished idea, put it out there. See if it sticks. If it don't stick, it don't stick. As long as you're not losing bank, you're not losing your shirt, you're not losing everything you own on it, then you're having a little fun. See where it goes. Um,
Yeah,
you
I mean
know.
that's probably the only way to really grow is to put yourself out there, see what works, see what doesn't work, and to your point, not everything's going to hit it out of the park. And I think sometimes it's hard to know what is and is not going to be successful. In the moment, you can feel like this is a good idea and you can always execute the idea to the best of your ability. But how it's going to be received is completely out of your control. It especially nowadays, things like algorithms, politics, mainstream media, like all these different external factors, things that are happening
Oh
in the world,
yeah.
they can
I mean,
completely derail any sort of idea you might have or any excitement or momentum you pick up. And then to that same point, film festivals, I I think once you get to a point where your film is technically proficient, it just comes down completely to taste of whoever is screening it because they can objectively say, it looks nice, it's a good film, but for whatever reason, they just aren't going to schedule it for that program. So I think a lot of people beat themselves up over that sort of thing too. It's very easy to fall in this um, beating yourself up trap as a
well, yeah. I
filmmaker,
mean,
thinking
I,
like
I
people
think
don't like
with
my
that
stuff.
because some even like anywhere else in the world, some of it's even who you know. If you know the people that are doing these screenings, well, obviously you have a better chance of getting in these festivals.
Yeah.
And some of these people do; they're good friends with them.
Yep.
Some of these people that own small films are actually the people that put on the festivals
Yeah.
because they get to screen their own film and then they take on other people to cover their cost.
There you go. Yeah, they just have
And
a
there's many things in it. Sometimes it's backstage politics. It isn't always about what you've done or who you are or what your content is. Um, Unfortunately, we do live in an age, like you said, though. You know, back 70s, 80s, yeah, things were different. But you put out a horror movie, people just figure it's a movie. They left it at the theater. They left it. Today, you trigger somebody with it, and it gets into a political realm. You're screwed because the movie gets criticized, or that part gets criticized or torn apart one way or the other. It doesn't matter which. Politics, religion, all these kinds of things are just can kind of tear things apart these days, whatever it is, even music. The same thing happens in music all the time. People put out a song, it doesn't go with the grain, or it's going against people and people don't like it, so they tear it down, and it just kills that creative flow where it just sometimes people put stuff out not for with any message at all. It's meant to be out there.
well, and I think that's more my line of thinking when I'm making things. People sometimes will ask, like, "Oh, what's the deeper meaning? Oh, is this like a metaphor?" Right? And we think about filmmaking, and sometimes they say, what do you want to tell the world?" And where I'm at is I don't think anything I'm going to put out is so deep. And that's not to say you can't make a deep film, but a lot of the things I make are just supposed to be entertainment. I think we've lost that a little bit as a society. We think, what are you trying to say? It's like, well, some things can just be for enjoyment. You can just like something. This could just be a fun watch. It could be a fun ride. It doesn't have to be a
Sometimes,
movie.
I mean, I'll be honest, I've made things because, like, I played around with film and camera. I don't got a crew assist myself, so none of the stuff's super great, but you know, it's getting there. And I made one film called The Shoes, and it started off as gonna be as one way, and it was about me finding a pair of shoes that were just whatever, and then I ended up adding to it, and improvising and changing, and by the end of it, I added another scene at the end. And some people gave it negative criticism. They're like, "I don't like the way you ended it, this and that. It leaves too much open. It leaves too many questions." And I'm just like, "Yeah, but you gotta understand, if I was gonna go into the original backstory that I had in my mind, we'd be talking about talking like a Star Wars trilogy just to explain it. It's like I gotta cut all that out. I got 8 minutes to make something, make it
Yeah.
work. And and is there any deeper meaning? No, it's just it happened to be this is what I had for costume, and this is what I had for prop, and this is what I had for FX. So I had to make it work in a way that I could use things without looking super cheap budgeted. Sometimes that's all it is. It's just a matter of what you can do out of necessity. Could I go back and film it differently? Yeah, when I get a budget or some other better effects. People do that all the time. They remaster their films, or they take short films and turn them into features, or do other things with it.
Well, there's some questionable examples of that. I think was it Cabin Fever? They remade Cabin Fever almost shot for shot. Uh, Eli Roth's Cabin Fever, excuse me. I think there was one
Yeah.
before that. And we talk about going back and doing it again. I don't really know what the purpose of that was.
No, that was unpurposeful. That one I will agree there that I don't think should have been done. But there's been films out there like Happy Games. They did a great job making it shot for shot for the American audience.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it doesn't work. I think about Old Boy, the American version. I don't know. It followed so close to the story. I really didn't think they were going to go the into the incest stuff in the American version, and then I believe they did, and I was surprised they did. But for that story, it really worked in the international version. So I didn't think they'd make it an American. For some reason, yeah, the American version, I just don't think it really worked for me. I don't know why, but yeah, it's
Yeah, I mean,
interesting
that's
how
the thing.
sometimes
For
things
me, a
work,
lot of the
sometimes they don't.
American versions don't work. That's one of the rare
Yeah.
instances that I was saying is Happy Games is that's because Funny Games rather, and that's because again, it was the same director, but a lot of the times when these films get remade for the American audience, it turns into a blockbuster motion picture with a happy ending and a hero and this and that. But if you go back and watch the foreign film or the original film, it's very bleak ending, very dark. Like Speak No Evil in the original, foreign film, the ending is just the ending. The parents get killed. This one happens. This ends. This The American version comes out later on, and they got the mother being an action hero. She saves the
Yeah.
day. This is a happy ending. It's like, okay, I get where you're coming from, but sometimes it's horror, and horror needs a bleak ending. You don't need it to be happy.
And I think we as a writer, when we're coming at these characters, there could be different ways to do that, to set things up, because sometimes, and we see it sometimes in film. It seems to be a lot of times in the horror genre. It ends up being these quote unquote bad movies. We just don't care about the characters because there's like no character development. Like we just don't care about them. So then we end up kind of rooting for the bad guys because we're like, I don't know what's going on with this person, but I do kind of want them to die. Right? So it could kind of be a good thing. But to your point with like Speak No Evil, I don't think that was the intention of like, trying to flip the script and make people feel certain ways. I think they do have higher ups, wherever it might be, that say they want endings to be a certain way. So whether it's the writer or the director, whoever has to compromise to get things made, um, I think sometimes they're willing to bend so that they can get it made.
Yeah, no, that is true, and that's really the most corporate way you probably could do it, unless you can fund it yourself and distribute it yourself and so forth. But like I said, you see these great films from like French, like Martyrs and like High Tension with just crazy endings, crazy plots. You don't really get that out of, America. We get more of the gore effect. We get more of, the
Yeah.
Terrifier effect. The let's chainsaw somebody up his ass. Let's cut off heads and shit. But the psychological abuse and physical abuse gets kind of omitted a lot of the times, which can be scarier because it can resonate with people,
Realistic.
realistic. It resonates with people. There's people that won't watch Martyrs because the violence is so realistic. It's not so much that it glorifies it, but it puts it in a way that it seems like this is plausible. This could happen. Could a clown go out and kill people? Yes, but could it be Arthur Clown with all the supernatural stuff? Probably not. But human on human crime can happen anytime, anywhere, and I think that's the scariest thing. That it's the boogeymen that we don't know and can't see, or the ones that we're living with that we don't know about.
Yeah,
Especially
they're
as
definitely.
children, when you see movies with children involved, I watch a lot of J horror too, and a lot of times they use children in it, because their parents were either bad or done something bad to them. Again, it hits a different kind of a string in horror or as emotions pull. Because a lot of stuff now for me is just like I said, a lot of you know, slasher films don't really do it because it's the same. After you've seen one or two or three, now you're just looking for effects. You're looking for murder effects. You're looking for kill effects. How are they going to do this? How is the kill shots going to be? It's more about that rather than the storyline.
Yeah, well, I mean, for sure, right? We keep talking about Terrifier. I I haven't seen the third one. I've seen the first two, and I very very light on story. I have no idea what's going on. It just seems like they're trying to get from kill to kill, right?
It is,
So
but it's one of those movies that I talk about because it did break the barriers in our modern times from being a totally independent film that nobody wanted to touch to being a money making franchise where people are buying toys are flying off shelves, costumes are being bought, a lot of merch, talking about a fourth film. It still doesn't
yeah,
have that Hollywood backing, but people like it. And the
yeah,
plot doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's it's there's 80 movies out there that did a better job explaining things that are on Tubi right now. But
yeah.
the
I think
visions
I
that
think
he
they
had
know.
in
I think they know what they are. They're very good at doing what they do, and I don't think they should change a thing. They've found their little niche, and that's where um,
No,
they're
I
seeing
think
success and
the
they can keep
chaos in the
exploring it.
movie is what makes it work. It doesn't need that plot that people can figure out. I think it needs the speculation because it's a slasher film, because it's a clown film. It needs that people to speculate. Well, who's behind this? Who's this? There's no definitive answers or clear answers of what's going on, which gets people to talk, and that's what helps it. I think people talking gives it lore. People getting interested. They want to know more about it. When you give too much or too many answers or explain too much, the movie becomes unrewatchable, first of all,
Yeah.
which you don't want that to happen. You want a rewatch value. Second thing that happens is it gets kind of flat. There's no more digging you can do in it. I remember the early days of movies. You would go on the internet, start digging all this information, and try to find out stuff or cool facts and stuff. Once you know everything about a backstory or everything is explained, definitively, which a lot of directors won't, or will do it much later. They'll let it brew for years, but definitive answers kind of kill off all this kind of fandom. So you
Yeah.
let that fandom grow. That's what makes the movie expandable. People adding their own lore, people role playing, cosplaying, all that stuff. It makes it much
Well,
larger than it really is.
we're seeing a lot of that right now with like Stranger Things. People not wanting to accept the ending and things are done, and that's I think probably a double-edged sword for the creators, because it seems like it is done, but so for them it's probably hard to see people wanting more, but at the same time, it has to feel good seeing people want more, to not feel like you've overstayed your welcome, to the point where people are waiting for you to leave. Like I feel like Walking Dead
Walking Dead went
way
way too
overstayed
long.
its
Yeah,
welcome. Way too long. We think Stranger Things probably got at a good time. Breaking Bad, they went out on top. They
even
it's
shows like older shows, Sopranos did a really good job not
oh, I
going
don't know
too
about
long.
the ending, right? Just like cutting to black mid
Boom.
just
I mean,
boom.
even and if you go back, I mean, I think a long running series would be X Files. X Files found it a way to be innovative.
I think they're coming back. I think they were doing a remake or something.
Yeah, I think
Maybe they did
people
already.
enjoyed
I don't
that. There
know.
was a lot of stuff that could kind of go into that, but Walking Dead got stale fast. There's only so much you can do with zombies and at some point it got away from it. It wasn't really about the zombies. It was more about a Mad Max kind of post-apocalyptic world and navigating through that rather than just
Yeah.
your zombie horror.
Well, I think that's probably just out of necessity, because we talked about before, slashers are kind of like a one trick pony, right? So then it becomes, how can we make this different? Well, zombies kind of the same thing, a little bit of one trick pony. So then they have to have that drama. It's more of I think, just a drama overall, but it went too long. I think they have a couple
Yeah.
spinoffs. I don't even know where those are, if they're still going or if they're dead in the water. I think they should probably let it rest personally.
The
But
one show I
just
really liked, but the ending kind of just was like, yeah, was the show Lost. I was really into that show. That
yeah,
show had a lot of good points to it. It played with your mind a little bit.
yeah, a
But
lot of people criticize that show and any other show or movie that kind of the same thing, where it just at the end almost insults the audience to the point of saying like, oh, and then none of this actually happened, right? Sort of thing.
people criticize the ending of Seinfeld. People are going to criticize the
They're gonna
ending of
criticize
any
anything.
series.
Oh, they do. I know they do. Cookies for Christmas. There's plenty of critics for that.
Well, that was a
Maybe
good
some warranted,
ending.
some not so warranted, but just criticism in general.
I mean, the
As a
only thing I was going
filmmaker,
to think of that
can only do
I
so much.
didn't know was, and that would have gave me a chuckle, was that there was two killers. One was the guy had killed the lady's parents,
Yeah,
and then there was the Santa that comes and kills them. That was the only thing that I was thinking that maybe could have happened, because he was kind of just already there, but then I saw the parent, laying down. You kind of see, and then you see the Santa kind of reach for the phone. I'm like, oh, okay, Santa did it.
there you
But
go.
at first,
Yeah.
I did think it was the boyfriend, the kind of guy that was kind of there, the hometown guy.
That's
So I'm
funny you
like,
say that, because when we were in the writing process, that is something we considered doing. But when we were actually writing this, it was a little too close to when Barbarian came out. So we
Yeah.
kind of just pivoted. We hadn't really decided what we were going to do, but that was an idea we tossed around, and I kind of nixed it because I said it's a little bit too barbarian, where we're trying to pull the rug out from under you, sort of thing. Because we were going to
Killer
go
within
down
a
the rabbit
killer
hole.
within a killer. Yeah.
Yeah, we were going to be like, oh, maybe we make her think it's him, or maybe it is him, or whatever it might be.
But had that
But
movie not come out, it would have worked great.
yeah,
he
yeah.
he was definitely the role for it. He was like almost too nice or too friendly and just something
Oh,
off.
and he's that way in person too. His name is Jason Potter. He's such a nice guy. Really, really talented actor. And he also does some things behind the camera too. But really incredibly nice guy. It's a joy to have on set. And it's funny, we talk about criticism. Somebody I think had commented on YouTube about his character, saying, God, what did they say? Good riddance to the creeper or something like that. Like, I was like, what? No, here within the universe of Cookies for Christmas, Matthew is genuinely the nicest guy. Like,
Just a
he's
good
not a
guy on a
creeper. He's
Christmas
just a
Eve
good
night.
guy.
He's just helping
He's
out.
he wrong place, wrong time, sort of thing.
But
But in a lot of those Hallmark movies, that's how it is, right? It's this
it
guy's
is.
too good to be true, right?
But the thing
And
is the
that's what he
world
is.
the the world isn't used to nice people. The world are used to just
Oh
people
no.
be faking nice. So when they see someone genuinely nice, it scares them more than anything.
Yeah, I think you might, if you're more from a smaller town, you might be more used to that sort of kindness,
Yeah, I'm
where it's
from
just like
Boston.
people
We don't
helping
really
each
see
other.
nice people out here.
No, no. It's something I was surprised. I years ago helped a friend move to New York, and uh, or not. We were going to Connecticut, excuse me, but we drove through New York, and we were driving through the city at one point, and we had to get over. And we were so stressed. There was just so many lanes we had to get across, and we were like, "Oh, we're gonna miss our exit, right?" And turn on the blinker, and everybody immediately let us in. Every single time, people immediately let us in. And I was thinking like people were just gonna be so rude and honk at
No,
us or
no,
not let
that's
us in
not
or
like
whatever it
that.
might be.
I wouldn't say people aren't like nice. People are generally nice. It's just people don't want to be. People aren't friendly. They don't want to talk. It's
No,
hard to get
yeah,
people to talk. Even I think that's a post-pandemic thing anyway. People just don't want to be bothered with other people. They just want to kind of stick to themselves.
I, it can be, I think, an American kind of thing too. I think in some countries, it can be seen as rude to ask people how they are, right? Which seems so silly to us. We're like, oh, that's just like an opener. He's like, hey, how's it going, right? But like in other
Mhm.
countries, it's like maybe rude. It's like,
It's
you don't
almost
know who I am. That's none of
prying,
your
and
business, right?
I think we're also in an age where there's more diversity and more cultures integrated into the country than not. So like asking the one question could easily insult 3 out of the 5 people you're talking to.
Yeah.
It could happen with that. And also, like I said, I think some people just, they're in a mood or they're in their own head and they just don't want to be bothered with other people or they're afraid that they're gonna inherit other people's problems. So a lot of people like to dump problems on people. There's a lot of scam artists out there. There's a lot of people that come to you with their sob stories and then they want, $75 for bills.
Yeah.
And so I guess a lot of people have their guard up, and the easiest way to not have to deal with that is just don't talk to people or get people to know you. Which I mean, I don't blame them. I like I said, I like the horror cons because when you go to horror cons, you're stuck with horror fans. These people generally like horror. They love it. They're bringing their collectibles out there. They got some crazy collectibles, old collectibles, one of a kinds, homemade collectibles. People are cosplaying. People are into this. And I haven't met one person that I haven't said hi to that hasn't said hi back or stopped and talked. Everybody's so friendly.
They're also
Friendliest.
nice. Yeah, it's kind of funny to think about, right? The audience, the horror audience, is just so kind, so receptive, so friendly, and you would almost think maybe it wouldn't be that way, just because of the subject matter. But always the nicest people. I
It
think a lot
is.
of times
It's funny.
this
It's
audience
just
can
is
kind of
it.
separate, what's happening on screen from reality, right? So they can be
And
they
the
can be nice, they can be genuine, and still enjoy, this different gory horror films and whatever it might be.
Oh yeah, and even some of the horror guests or the movie stars, when they go, like I've met many of the Jasons, like Kane Hodder and C.J. Graham and stuff. Some of the nicest guys. I mean, sitting there talking. I met Bill Moseley. He was super friendly to talk to, and he played psychopaths and killers and so much on TV. But at the end of the day, they're just, again, they're actors, they're characters, they're really talented, but they're also just human beings, and above all, and then even that, they're human beings that like horror movies.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we're all just human beings that like horror movies at that convention. So the kind of status just gets dropped, and everyone's just a bunch of humans that like horror movies, and we're all on the same level for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's nice
Uh,
to kind of, go to a little bit of a different place where you can not focus on bills or your car or issues or whatever it might be. You can just focus on having a good time,
I
enjoying the
think
movie.
that's
I
why
think
I
the
try to
movies
go to
are
them
an
for
escape
the
for a lot of
inspiration.
people.
That's why I think I go there for the inspiration, because you can leave all that other stuff behind. You can just talk about the
Yeah.
creativity. Plus, you're listening to panels, you're talking to people, you're watching, different screens, different short films. And you're getting picking people's brains and such. It's always, you learn something new, or you gain some new insight on something. Oh, hey, I could try it this way, or I didn't think about that. Especially when I like to talk to the vendors and get to know, all the directors that got their films, and all the authors that are selling their books. And I like to sit and pick their brain too. I go get the guest done first, get my shit signed, put it all in the car, and then I just walk around and talk to the vendors and talk. And, that's one of the things I really, like I said, I like to do is meet all the independent people, because A, they're very friendly. They want to, sell you their stuff, or at least get their idea to you. And they also do it in a very good format. It's not a lot of bullshit. Because they only have they know they have a limited time for your attention span. They get right to the point very fast, which I find to be very pleasant, because A, there's a lot of vendors, so it's just like bam, I'm getting you like 2 minutes about what your story's about, rather than having to talk a half an hour. And then if I like it, obviously I'm sitting there talking longer. But everybody's really good at getting their story, getting your attention, which is nice. Like I said, I'm into all that. I like that kind of scene. Plus, I like to indulge in a little of the shopping, horror collectibles, posters, figures, all that stuff. I get too much of it, but it's for another episode. There's no really way to justify it, but hey, what are you gonna do?
Well, what's your favorite collectible? You said you collect some of them. What's your favorite horror collectible you got?
Right now, it might be the signed by the most of the staff of Return of the Living Dead poster. Um,
So you said signed by most of them. Are you hoping to get as many signatures on there as you can?
well, I went to a con over the summer, and I got over September. Got like this going on there.
Oh wow, look at that.
And I got
Yeah,
like
that's
my
cool.
Scream. This one I actually like
Yes.
too. Alice Cooper and Jason.
Wow.
I got
Man, these are awesome.
my old Cannibal Holocaust poster, which I do like that too. I picked that up along the way. I get all my like NECA figures. And then I like physical media. Like I honestly I don't like, I stream a lot of stuff, but I need it's almost a compulsion. I need a physical copy of, you know, um whatever I'm watching, just because eventually companies lose streaming rights, and I get agitated, because I'll put a movie in a watch later, and then I won't watch it. And then when I go to watch it, they want me to pay $9.99. I'm like, damn it.
Yeah.
Um, and also, if the internet goes out or something, I love just having the physical version to watch. So I can just watch the movie plus the extras, and different things. Like I bought this Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Blu-ray. It has a documentary, but it also has like 10 different cuts of the Texas Chainsaw, from like 16 millimeter to 8 millimeter to VHS versions.
Got everything.
And I love that, because you can see the grain. And I'm the kind of person, like, I love my 4K upgrades, and I love all that, but I love to see the graininess, because, there's a lot of horror in just how grainy the film looked. Like, we didn't really see the faces good back in the day on the square TV. You couldn't really make out all the time what was going on, so it made it even scarier.
You know, and to that point, it's always so crazy to me when we watch whatever news outlet or whatever it might be, and they show like a TV clip from like 2005 and just how bad it looks. And I'm always like, God, like, this is what TV used to look like, right?
Well,
Like
yeah,
we
it's
used
it's
to watch
wild,
it. Like we didn't ever think it looked bad. We always thought it looked good.
I play video games still the same, but I've been playing since, Nintendo, and, obviously every year the, games get graphic upgrades, and I go back and play
Exactly.
the original, I'm like, "Dude, we used to think this was amazing graphics coming out. Now we got, movie style graphics out there." It's
Yeah.
like, my kid looks, it's like, "How'd you even play that?
I
How
know. I
can you even
remember
s that's a
I was
car?"
I was playing Halo, and I remember thinking at the time, like, this is like the peak. It's never gonna get better than this. Like, this is like as good as it can get. No.
No, they
I
kept
guess it
pushing
got a
that
lot better.
envelope,
Still getting better. Oh man,
and
well that's cool. I think it's awesome you collect all those things. It's just so fun to have things that you be passionate about. Hobbies. I don't necessarily collect memorabilia from for movies. All the short films and music videos and things I've done, I usually try to get something from the set as like a little way to remember. So I have like back here different little things that I've collected from different movies. For Cookies for Christmas, I kept the Santa plate.
oh,
So I got the
nice.
Santa plate back there, and then I gave the director of photography the little radio we used. I gave him that. So it's nice to have like these little souvenirs, I guess, from.
Yeah, yeah, it's actually one of the questions people always ask the pets, like, "Did you take anything home from the set?" And it's funny how many, like, people what they say they take. Like, one will be like, "Well, I ended up taking my pair of shoes."
Right.
And one was like, "I ended up taking this." And it makes you remember that it's a set. This is
Yeah.
what you're wearing on a set. You don't own this stuff. This is just you're going, you're getting dressed for work, and you're taking it off, and you're leaving. Like,
Well, that's where I'm like a little bit lucky and fortunate because usually I'm the one that's having to foot the bill on a lot of these projects I'm doing. So I gotta kind of just keep it if I want to or give it away. And
yeah,
usually I
no, I
try to
mean,
do.
on the indie scene of the lower budgeted films and such, yeah, you get that option. But when you get to Hollywood, it's like, okay, here's your wardrobe. This is
Yeah,
it. You're gonna dress up every day, and it's like you think about it, it's like, well, wait a minute, they don't actually get to pick what they're wearing. They're just getting handed clothes.
yeah. Well, and I think where I'm at in my career, I wear so many hats and you're stressing about so many different things: pre-production, during production, post-production. Um, I would gladly kind of do that trade-off. Say, hey, don't take anything from set, and we're gonna have somebody completely dedicated to production design, wardrobe, all these different things. I'm just like, all right, cool. You guys handle that, and then I don't have to stress about it.
Well, let me ask you, what was the average budget for the Cookie movie, the short film?
That one we were about 12,000. Most of that, I'd say the lion's share, probably 8 or 9,000, went to pay people. So everybody, cast crew, everybody was paid, and then of course we brought in food. We paid for the food and everything. Of course, you have to get insurance. The location was an Airbnb, which they knew we were filming. And it's funny, every time I've used an Airbnb, the people are always saying like, "You can't make a porno," and I'm like, "Okay, well, it's not a porno. Different bodily fluids coming out. It's gonna be blood." But yeah, so yeah, it honestly. I've done films for $0. I've done films. The highest was probably pushing like 20,000, and it doesn't matter how much money you have, it's like almost gone like immediately. Like when you're cranking out the budget, it's going to pay this person, going to pay that person, it's going to get this rental, it's going to the catering. So it's just it's very easy to grow within whatever budget you have. It's not
Oh
like you're
yeah, you can
miraculously
easily
gonna
max
have.
it out. What
Oh
was
yeah.
how long did you shoot it for? How long did it take to shoot?
It was 2 days. So the first day was lengthy. It was all the Hallmark stuff, and then at the end of the day, we drove around and got the car shots that are at the very beginning. It was actually, we filmed it in April. Fortunately for us, we filmed it in Colorado Springs, Colorado. They had not taken down their Christmas lights in April, so we still had Christmas lights, so we were able to get all that. And then the next day was the like kills, so we were really focused on the kills for the second day. Um, and that was, obviously by design. We wanted to give ourselves as much time to make it as good as we could. So yeah.
And obviously everything practical effects,
Yep.
for
Hmm.
that,
Yeah.
which I
So
do
the
appreciate.
eye, we had so like when he first got stabbed in the originally we wanted the candy cane sticking out of his eye, but the candy cane, the makeup artist we had, it was just going to be too heavy. The practices they did, it unfortunately didn't look as good as probably they would have liked, or I liked. It wasn't working, so we just said, okay, we'll have the candy cane come out, and we can do a nice little blood splurt. So what you can't see because we cut in is right on the other side of his head. We have somebody, one of our PAs, with a syringe of blood that just kind of like squirts it as soon as he pulls it back. I give him like a 3 count. It's like on three, 1, 2, 3, sort of thing. And then we had
Well,
extra blood at the end, and we did this giant like Quentin Tarantino, just blood splatter like shooting out his eye, just because we had it, and we were like, well, let's just do a ridiculous fun one. Uh, so maybe we'll have to release like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We'll release a cut where we have just this ridiculous like 30-second eyeball spitting blood.
well, that's the beauty of it, though. Like, especially with practical effects, you can just have so much fun with it. I find it to be. I mean, it's not a lost art because there's a lot of people that still use it, but VFX are getting popular. I mean, mostly, I just don't feel they work so well for horror. There's nothing, fake blood in a horror film is just like, eh,
And what I
you
found
know.
too is, as an independent filmmaker, when I'm and the producer for a lot of these projects, when we're trying to figure out how we're going to make some of these kills or injuries or whatever it might be come to life on screen, I think it's been easier to figure out a practical way to do it than it is to try to conceptualize or just dismiss it as something that we'll figure it out in post production. And it's fun, trying to figure these things out. We have on the festival circuit right now a satirical prescription drug commercial, where they start listing off all these different side effects that a medication can have. And one of them is vomiting, nausea and vomiting. And we built this vomit rig using a pump that you would use. It's a flood pump. So if your basement flooded or you're trying to get water out of your pool, we built this pump that we kind of set next to the actress, and it like projectile vomited, a la Exorcist. So it's fun. It's a lot of fun to try and figure these things out. And the final pump we had was like the third iteration or idea of what we had originally conceptualized. We thought about using a gravity fed thing. It just didn't have enough force. Thought about using like a leaf blower and like pumping water just on the front of it, and that just looked ridiculous. It didn't work. But yeah, with what we got on screen, I think the flood pump ended up working pretty okay. So
Well, I think
yeah,
that's that's almost the fun part of it, or the challenge of it. Like, what can we do? How can we make things work with what we got? But how can we make it cinematic magic? How can we make it look good just for the lens? It doesn't have to look good everywhere. It just has to look good in front of that camera within that little box. Anything
it's
outside of
that look
that
good for
box
three
does not
seconds.
matter.
Yeah, and I think something you had talked about earlier with your project. You said, was it shoes?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, yeah, you had mentioned trying to make a story within the resources you have. I think a lot of times when people are making films, at least in the beginning, until they maybe it clicks for them, maybe they figure it out. They try to do too much outside of what they have, their resources. And I think about high school, college age kids that might be making a film, and they have kids or very young people playing adults or what are supposed to be adults, and it just doesn't work, right? It's not realistic. So it's like, well, if you don't have access to older actors, write something that has younger actors. We just in December, the beginning of December, we filmed a horror short called Wellness Retreat that's in post production right now, and it takes place in a seedy motel. I tried to find one. It's hard to do because all these motels have renovated. So even if it looks a little rough on the outside, the inside usually looks pretty nice. You know, they got nice lighting now. They got nice white sheets. The floor is, you know, some sort of vinyl panel flooring. So it's not really that seedy vibe you're wanting. So
You got to go to
um,
New Jersey. I've been to
gotta go to
places in Jersey.
Jersey.
They got like burn. They still got like burn holes in the blankets and shit.
There were a couple of motels we were looking at, and they were pretty bad, and it became a safety consideration too. You know, where I'm like, do we want to bring people here? Like, we don't want any guests of the motel to think like we're making fun of them or anything like that, or you know, we don't want any gear to get stolen or anything like that. You know, it's just not always a good place to be. And it was hard to get in contact with some of these motel owners because in the script we reference several times like how shitty it is at the motel because you know it's like the whole shtick is like this is like a bad place to be.
Yeah, nobody's gonna
And
want that press though. It's like, yeah,
exactly,
they're
they're
gonna
like,
recognize my
oh,
place.
no
No one's
thanks.
gonna come here.
Well, we ended up filming it. I built it in my basement, so we built a set in my basement to look like a motel. So really excited for that to come out, and I have to tell everybody I can, every opportunity I get, to say we built this motel set because I don't think, with any luck, I don't think people are going to be able to tell it's a
No,
set we
I'm
did.
excited to see it now. I want to see what you've made in your basement. That's wild. But
Yeah,
again, that's
and
the innovation. That's the kind of stuff that, like, again, inspires, and that's where I think I gain the inspiration because you hear these stories, you hear what people can do, hear what people have done, or how they make it work. And I think that's the attitude with a lot of film people. Let's make it work. It doesn't matter how, we're just going to get it to work. We can find a
yeah,
workaround. There's almost a workaround to almost everything. And
yes,
some of it doesn't have to cost money. Some of it's really cheap.
no,
I mean, you see people do special effects with plastic bags and freaking shit. You don't,
oh
you
yeah.
have some of the basic effects in the world at your fingertips with just, free stuff that's laying around the house. And I think you're right. A lot of people think that I need A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and they won't put it out because they only have A, B, C. It's like, well, you work around it. Like, I needed a scene for a gun. I needed a shot. I know I have a toy gun. Everything on the toy gun looks almost real except, obviously the big orange shit on the front. So I put it in a position that you wouldn't see that. I didn't have anything to run, blood, and I didn't want to trigger off YouTube. So the screen fades to like basically black, then you just hear a gunshot, then you just see me lying down. There is no, dramatic beep, any blood anywhere. So I kept the gore at a minimum because I wanted A for YouTube and B, I just didn't have the resources. It was just me by myself. And it was like 11:30 at night. I was like, how am I gonna finish this film off? And it just came to me, okay, let me film it this way. And I just did it all in like 2 hours worth of filming, and I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna edit it and see how it comes out." And that's just what I came with. But I mean, like I said, I could have not have done anything because I didn't have all the fancy stuff to make it what I want. But I said it didn't need all that. The perception of what's gonna happen is gonna be there. I wasn't looking for the shock value so much of what's on screen. I wasn't looking for this visceral blood or all this gore. I just needed to tell the story in the ending.
I think
So it
sometimes
worked.
sometimes it's not even just a limit to independent filmmakers. It can be Hollywood level too. Hollywood still uses these tricks. I recently saw Death of a Unicorn, and
Love
there's a
that
part in
movie.
it where they're hiding under the car, and the unicorn's out there, and the unicorn steps on a guy's head, starts putting pressure on it, and then he basically pops the head.
Yeah.
We don't see the head pop. It cuts away from his face being pushed to their reaction as they and just sound effects and everything. So it's
But
like
yeah, you don't see the
there's
actual you
ways.
don't see the final, the result, and you don't need to. Again, it leaves to memory. I mean, it leaves the mind to wander off of, well, we don't really need to know what he looks like. There's plenty of movies that do show what happens or do show that effect, and that's fine, but you can cut all that out, especially if you want to keep it at a certain rating.
I think a lot of times too, it's better not to show, you know, the big bad. It happens all the time. Like I'm watching a movie, it shows whatever this demon or monster or whatever it might be, and it's just almost always a letdown. Like I'm thinking it's going to be something way scarier, way grittier, whatever it might be, and then it shows it, and I'm like,
It's a
you
Jeepers
know,
Creepers effect. I love Jeepers Creepers until I found out the creeper had wings and was like a monster, and it wasn't like some demented human being.
yeah.
Sometimes the human's more scarier than the monster.
Well, nothing scarier than the last Jeepers Creepers that came out,
Well, that was pretty
in a bad
scary.
way. I don't know if you've seen it. It is
Y- I
so
don't know.
far
I think
out.
3 was worse than 4.
I don't know if
The
I saw three. I saw the first one. I saw the school bus. I don't know
third
if I
one
saw
went
three.
straight to Sci-Fi Network, and I just didn't like it.
Yeah.
4,
Fourth one was bad, like bad, bad. It was like all
yeah.
green screen. I was like, how did this get made? And it's it's interesting too because we're talking. Well, at least I am. I think maybe you share the sentiment. We're talking poorly about it, and I'd really like to know like the story about how it became what it ultimately became, because I'm sure at some point it was not supposed to be that, right? It was supposed to be genuinely great, and then just along the way, and I've experienced myself, production hiccups start to happen. You lose your director, you lose your writer, you lose your actress, whatever it might be, and then
Well, I mean, I
we
think
talk
the
about
first thing is
pivoting.
they lost some of the actors. I mean, you had a really decent cast on the first film. First film was fine. Second film, now you got a bigger cast. You're not talking about a duo or a trio. You're talking about a school bus. They play more on that factor. But again, they're also working off of almost like an it factor where like every so amount of years something has to feed and this thing feeds. And now they have to incorporate they didn't film that movie right after, so they have to make it look within the same time period that the
Right.
last feeding happened. But then they let the beast get captured, which okay. But now if 2 had ended and that was the end of the films, I would say, okay, fine, we're done. But then 3 came along, and it's like, well, how do we get to here?
I think what happens is there's different writers, and as they're writing their story, they don't anticipate or plan that they're going to have to write the next one. So they're like, that's a problem for someone else
No,
to
it's
figure
like
out.
Hellraiser. Every movie after the third just goes wherever they want.
And I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea. Like, like
No,
let's just make each of these movies its own standalone thing. Right?
it
Like
isn't,
we
but
can
but
have
they
our own
tried to
adventure.
connect the dots with it, and that was the problem. See, now with Jeepers Creepers, I think it would have almost been more. It would have been more meaningful if they went back in time. If we seen a prequel, the last feeding or the previous feedings when it was out before. Forget about the future; it's already captured. Let's go back. Let's do what they did with Derry. Let's go back in
Yeah,
time.
that's what I
You
was going to
know,
just bring up.
and that
It is some interesting
works.
stuff.
That works. Everybody wants a prequel. I think prequels are better than sequels in a lot of ways because people want to know the backstory. And you can go back with the backstory and not have to have it live up to the initial version of it. But if you do a sequel, everybody's going to assume that it's going to be as great as the first or close to it. And it never, hardly ever is. I mean, maybe Godfather did it and a few other films, but for the most part, no. I mean,
Or you can just
and that's the
go
thing.
more, more meta, like the Scream franchise, where they get to, they've, been so self-aware that they're allowed to make fun of what they're doing, in present with requels, prequels, sequels, threequels, whatever they might be. And that's actually coming out soon, so that'll be exciting to see.
Oh,
Matthew
number
Lilliard's supposed to
7.
be in it. Yeah.
Yeah. They teased
So
him. He was talking about it at Silver Scream Con.
I feel like he's probably, I don't know what his role's going to be. It would have, I don't
It
know.
could just be a flashback role. Who knows? I mean,
Something.
they talked about Ski being in Five Nights at Freddy too, and he was. It was a cool scene. He was just the father of one of the daughters, though. It wasn't like a huge role, but it was cool to see them both on set, even though it was
There we
different
go.
times. It plays the nostalgia. It plays into Scream. Scream was a great movie, and when that came out, again, it played with people's minds because there hadn't been a really good. There've been a lot of slashers, but there's never been a really good whodunit slasher. Maybe since first Friday the 13th, like we didn't know who the killer was. Like The
You know,
always,
BRB.
always the killer's note. Nightmare on Elm Street, killer's shown in the first shot is Freddy. Michael Myers is shown here. Like everybody's shown up front. Scream we didn't know. People love that. And I remember being in theaters and people walking out scared. People leaving the movie before it ended scared. Grown people. I was in my, early teens, late teens, mid teens. What was it, 98, 97? So I was like mid teens. And I remember like 30 and 40-year-olds, people my age now, walking out of the theater because they were scared.
Do you think we'll ever get that back? I don't know. I feel like maybe the amount of people that would walk out of a theater is probably a lot less
You're
now.
not going to be able to capture these cinematic horror movies. You're not going to be able to get the people to be scared like that. You're not going to get people to be mystique over, Blair Witch Project style movies or found footage films
Yeah,
because,
and the
you
and the
know,
advertising behind it, with like Blair
well,
Witch
the
there. When it came out, people really did not know if this
well, the
really happened
internet
or
was in
not.
its infancy, and internet was used for information. But when you did the internet, it brought you to websites that were just, made by the company, but it made it look so real, and people didn't know that internet could just be internet. So you
Yeah,
would have
don't
these
let the
fake
internet get
websites.
high.
Yeah, but it was fun. People enjoyed it. People liked it. You didn't know. People didn't know.
Yeah,
I remember doing a panel recently with them talking, and they were just like, it's great for all you guys, but we didn't get to enjoy any of the post film. We didn't get to go
right.
to any screenings, nothing, nothing at all. We had to be off everybody's radar completely because, they didn't want to do it. And luckily, nothing happened. Like, I look back at older films like, Cannibal Holocaust, and, he tried to do the same thing, and they ended up bringing him to jail. They thought he killed his crew.
Yeah. Well, and I'd almost take that as a compliment. I'd be like, "Oh, okay,
It was, but I mean, that was 70s,
we got good
fast
there."
forward a couple of years, but still, there was still people that just didn't, they didn't think that there was even a director behind that film. They just figured the
Yeah,
film
look too
was just a
raw. Yeah.
found film. We found a film. Oh my God. And it was it was plausible at the time because, well, could there be a lost film out there from, a VHS recorder? Because at that point, people had VHS recorders and anybody could film anything going on at any given time if they wanted to. What could be on that? What would it be? And people played into that. And just talking, I went to like I said, and listened to them and how they filmed that film was, very just, they were given just cues like,
Hmm.
okay, I want you to go left today. I want you to go right, like fight over it, but one of you are going one way. Like just go out. This is what's gonna happen today. This is what's gonna happen. Just make it happen. And a lot of the lines and everything were just improvised off of that.
Yeah, and they certainly were trailblazers in that regard, for horror and probably a lot of found footage cinema. So they found what worked and they worked.
For the
And
first
then,
film, anyways, the second one sucked.
well, sure, but that's what we talked about. A lot of times these sequels have a hard time capturing
Well,
that
that yeah, well,
same
that one they
magic.
tried to they tried to bring it into something that it just wasn't. The first one was a legit found footage film, though,
Right.
and the very first, for its time, one of the best ones done. Yes, Cannibal Holocaust might have been a found footage film, but it was like it was found footage within a cinematic film. There was a cinematic film going on, and then they displayed the found footage.
Right.
This was a total found footage film. Like if you just picked up a VHS tape and this is what popped in. I also like, similar if you want to go a little bit more violent, would be like August Underground. Something like that where it's just total, just like, okay, this looks like it's somebody made this film.
Yeah. Well,
And
I think. Oh, you
it,
can too.
well, I was gonna say he had a plot too to kind of disperse the film and just leave it, drop it. He was gonna drop it in all these various locations so people could pick it up and watch it. But then we got the anthrax scare, so
Oh,
he had to switch ploys and like change the marketing strategy for that film.
wasn't gonna
But
work.
originally he was just gonna leave it. And it would have been terrifying for people to bring home and just put on that kind of a movie and just be like, "What the hell did I just pick up?"
Yeah, man. I'm trying to think. After Blair Witch Project, there was, I think, maybe a gap. I can't think of another film that really broke the mold up until like Paranormal Activity in like this found footage sort of way. And then
Yeah, that
even
changed the
since,
game and got people into the ghost hunting game. Then there was all the spin-offs of that, which you still got today. You got,
yeah.
1,000 movies about people opening dive food boxes and stuff on Tubi.
Well, yeah, no, me personally, I don't think I want to mess with anything like that. I got some funny stories about finding things or friends finding things, and yeah, I'm not interested in. I've seen enough
But
horror movies to know you're not supposed to touch that or open it,
yeah,
right? Like,
right, right, right. You
maybe
get some kind of like I remember last year I was supposed to meet the real Annabelle doll, and we had tornadoes. We had tornadoes the day before, and we had damage. So I didn't end up meeting them. But the people that met her like all said that like terrible things had happened to them since then. I'm just like kind of like happy that I didn't go.
I can't remember who owns it right now. Is it like Matt Rife, like
Yeah.
the comedian? I think yeah, I saw like him or somebody else. Maybe him and somebody else bought it, like the uh, Warren little
No, and
museum
that's
or
the thing.
whatever.
I'm all for it. Like the Warrens were all for letting people see these things, but there was specific rules. They didn't want it leaving that basement. There was things. It
Well,
wasn't meant to
sure,
be
you can't
dragged
take it.
across the country.
Well, they have like a pretty or had pretty strict regimen about having a priest come in and bless things several times. I don't know if it was a week or a month, but yeah, they'd come in frequently, blessing things, and I'm sure they have a bunch of other I don't know what they're called, and uh, like Japanese folklore, and probably less folklore might not be the right word, so I apologize. But they have like those little scribes and things that like seal
Yeah.
evil and things like that. I wonder if they have anything like that. But yeah, if I walk into anything like that, I'm thinking I'm gonna not. You start thinking about real life horror. I'm like, oh no, that's okay. I
Well, no,
don't need
because
any of this stuff
I
in
mean,
real life.
yes, but see, that's where the line blurs because we have these cinematic films that were made upon this. You have The Conjuring, you have the Annabelle movie, but the movie isn't really like the actual events.
What it was really
Granted,
like.
the
Yeah,
movie is worse. More people died in the movie than in real life, but
yeah.
when there's real horror behind something, regardless, it's like, it hits a little too close to home, and there is a lot of paranormal stuff out there that's just like, watch enough, walk away, stay away.
Well, I think you're right. When you have the based on a true story angle, it definitely can be scarier for people. And then it makes me that just I was laughing because it made me think about weapons, and it opens on the kid narrator saying, "This is a true story." I was like, "All right, like, no, it's not."
No, and not maybe in this country, maybe in I don't know. I mean, there's obviously in that movie there is aspects of voodoo and probably other
Oh yeah,
practices that have been used and like Serpent in the Rainbow style stuff. But was it an actual event that took place? No, we see a news report. I would believe.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I
Well,
could
and
say
I'm
the
I'm
Conjuring
sure
House
I'm
and all
sure it was
that.
just how it was written, and I don't think they were really trying to claim it was based on a true story.
No, but I actually liked that film. I thought that they
No, it
did
was
something
great.
different.
Yeah.
I I like when people make different films. Even if the masses don't agree or don't like it, I just like to see things that are different, even if it doesn't even work 100%. At least try. You
Something I
know.
appreciated about Weapons is it's helping me wrap my mind around the possibility of writing a feature film. Um, Weapons was done so incredibly well, but if we were to really break it down, it's several short films edited together, and they just keep kind of bouncing around. And then, of course, all these stories intersect, but it is just different short films of each of these characters, right? We're just seeing into their life 15 minutes of them before it cuts to somebody else. And then, like I said, they're stories of
Yeah,
that.
kind of like a
But
movie where you see, three or four different, from their viewpoint. Even like a movie similar to like Requiem for a Dream, where it kind of
yeah,
bounces in and out, between each character's story.
this non-linear storytelling, I think, as a filmmaker that has primarily created in the short film space, it makes it less intimidating to try and conceptualize and come up with an idea for a feature, if you can maybe look at it saying, well, you don't have to come up with a 2 hour short film. You need to
No.
come up with 4 or 5 short films that can all coexist
Well, yeah, you
together.
take, even if you took like your one,
AB lines. Yeah.
if you took your one short film there and then you jumped in and showed what happened to the parents from their point of view, you
Correct.
take that, you showed from Santa's point of view, breaking out and doing what he's doing, and then you show it from the little girl's point of view. You put all those together, all of a sudden you got an hour and a half and a 2 hour film. You
Exactly.
know,
Yeah. So,
it's
like,
just building off your universe that you've already created and just elaborating it without having the mindset of, oh my God, I got to fill a 2 hour void. What am I going to do for a story? You already have the story. It's just a matter of making filler and adding micro stories or other storylines that intersect that one.
yeah. And I think as independent filmmakers, that is quite possibly the way to go. This nonlinear storytelling where, you are kind of jumping between character and character because as an independent filmmaker, it's hard. This is more or less a hobby, right? And we could call it a hobby, and I enjoy
It
it.
is.
This is something I like doing, but it is not what's paying my bills right now. So I do have a
Uh,
day job, right?
yeah,
So
I
I
have a
have to go
job
to work.
myself. I mean,
So
I
on
make films and I
weekends,
do internet stuff, but that's all fun. During the
exactly. So
day,
on
I do something else.
weekends we're filming, right? And we can film the little girl story this weekend. Next weekend we can film Santa's story. The weekend after we can film the parents' story. So then it's like easier, I think, as an independent filmmaker to think like that's how we can break up this production schedule instead of
And
thinking
even
like how are we
budgeting,
gonna
especially if
be
you're flipping bills, it's like I can break it down. I don't got to come up with, this
yeah,
huge lump sum for everybody to come out for 2 weeks. I can break this up into weekends, like you
there
said.
you go. Yeah, make it a little and then like if like I said, I built a set in my basement. If that's your space you have, you can film what you need, break it down, build the next set, right? Like, I think the biggest thing you can do as an independent filmmaker, at least starting out, is to rein in your resources. So try to make it always for short films. Always try to make it as short as possible. Try to minimize locations. Try to minimize characters. Isolate the story to one incident, like one thing that's happening. Like don't try to like make it bigger than you need to, but um yeah, I think we think about films that maybe don't work, and it's people are just trying to do too
The only
much.
thing I do
Too
is I
much
try to
going.
make it a little bit longer than I know it's going to be, just because I know I'm going to cut
Gonna cut
things
it out.
down or maybe find a tension point to cut out. And then also have an alternative version that's longer, because I am into that kind of like, you hear about it later on. People seek these things. They're like, "Oh my God, they got this version that got 13 extra seconds on this scene. I must see it." Becomes almost a novelty. But it's also easier to edit than, because you can always take away. You really can't add, especially when you're done. There's no way to go back and add the footage.
Yeah. Well, unless you're like saying like you're getting out, you can maybe have that extended scene that you can release
Oh yeah, I
later.
mean if it's myself, but I'm saying if I've used other people, there's nothing more I
Oh,
can
sure. Yeah, you can't
do
come
with
have it.
them.
It's
So I
it's a
try
lot
to
more
use
difficult to
their
bring it back
scenes,
in.
is get as much, and if even if it's over it, I can cut that down. Myself,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if I have to go in and do something, like you said, I don't have a wardrobe, it's my clothes. So I find what I was wearing in that shoot and I go back to it and I film whatever I have to do. And then, I set up tripods and so forth, but I think that's kind of the fun of it too, is seeing how I can make, a movie look like it was done in 15 minutes of a time span, but yet I filmed it in 3 days, in 3 different days, completely different days over the course of, 2 months.
Yeah.
But yet everything looks uniform when it's done, because, you save the outfit, you put it away, you know what you're wearing, you try to, you know, mimic the lighting and mimic the time of day.
I
It
think
becomes, like I
because
said, it's almost a challenge too, especially if you're busy and you want to get it done. It's like you got your regular job, and then how can I still get my, I call it some of my pet projects out there. How can I get this done too?
I do a lot of my own post production, and I think I really help myself out by trying to get all of the entirety of a scene completed. So I don't have to stress about trying to match lighting or hair or whatever it might be. I'm like, let's at least get this entirety of this part done. So then it's like continuity later. It's less of an issue, especially like we think about like color grading. Oh man, like that could be a huge headache. I'm just thinking how hard it would be and how hard it must be if you're talking about trying to pick back up and film something weeks or months later. So
Well, I mean,
seems like a lot.
I don't mind the color grade, and I don't mind Da Vinci. I actually enjoy it, but we're talking. I'm not talking major things, but I'm just saying. I've done like I couldn't come up again. I guess the ending. So it took me a while to figure out the ending of my film. I had the beginning done. I had the middle done first. Then I added the intro and the beginning of it. And then I was like, okay, how am I gonna finish this? I want to finish this, but I need to, keep it short as possible. My first film I did was like 20 minutes long and I hated it. Um, it just was running too long. The scenes were too long. So I had to cut it down. And I was like, what can I do? So I couldn't come up with an idea. And then one day, like I said, I was just hanging around. I said, I got it. My wife was like, got what? I'm like, I jumped out of bed. I freaking went downstairs. I had tripods, lighting. It was like
You set it all up.
1:30 in the morning. I'm setting everything up. And I'm like, okay, let me go. And like I said, I put it right back in and I tried to just, I said, I shot everything in log. So it was kind of easy to keep the format back when I had
Yeah,
to keep the coloring. I didn't put no LUTs or anything on it when I filmed it. And so I had my presets set, so luckily it kind of looked good. It didn't look like it was totally three different, cameras or anything. Everything was still filmed with the same camera, but even just a change in like, your coloring can make it look like it was filmed on something else.
yeah,
Um, no, my first film I made, I used a 16 millimeter vintage camera, and it just, I don't know, it just the saturation and everything I did with it, it looks terrible. The first part of the film that I shot, just the saturation and the contrast is just ridiculous. It's too black and white. Everything is kind of blown out. At first, when I did it, I liked it. I liked the look, but then I realized that I couldn't mimic the look throughout the whole film. I had forgotten what I used for settings. So there was
yeah.
no way for me to go and figure it out again either. I've tried color matching. I used all my programs I could to color match. Nothing was working on it. So I was like, okay, the rest of it's gonna look a little different. And I tried to make it look as much as possible, but then I was like, it's still not the same. The contrast, the color grade that I had filmed it in initially. That's why now I just do everything in either LUT or a very neutral color. I mean, in log or a very neutral LUT, so I don't have that issue of having to freaking go up and down with the scales too much, and I can grade
Yeah.
everything kind of uniformal.
Well, yeah, and it can be just so stressful.
But
Feeling like you're
I
getting
do
what you
like the
need.
post production part. I like to sound things myself. I mean, I know a lot of people like to pass it off too, and maybe if it was a bigger production, I would. But I figure if it's my own and it's an 8 or 12 minute long video that I made, I might as well just put in the extra effort and finish it off.
Yeah.
Am I the best at it? No, probably not. There's people out there that can probably do better, but it's mine. It's not going anywhere. Like, let me see what I can do.
I mean,
I can always say it sucks and pass it off to somebody else later.
that's the only way to get better is to do it. So I mean, you have to get that practice in those reps, right? You have to keep doing it. You have to keep trying. You have to
Well, I
keep
like to learn. I like to
going.
learn software. I started off in web design and graphic design. I ended up learning videography and video, FX and video software and, Adobe products and then I learned Da Vinci and color grading and playing around with that, and I've been really actually enjoying that because you can make things look vintage. I like to make things look vintage or look older than they are. I'll film it in crisp, but I like to bring it back to an older state. Again, going back to almost a VHS formatted film but you
Hmm.
have these imperfections. It just made it look more gritty, grimy, and scarier to me.
Yeah.
Um, and I like that dated look. I just do. But it's a lot of fun. The whole journey is fun though. Just learning, failing, repeat, trying again, even if it comes out like shit. There's been projects where I've like edited the whole thing and be like, I hate this whole version, and started all over again with all my pieces and re-edited everything. And it is what it is. Sometimes, like I said, it's the only way you're gonna learn. It's the only way you're gonna get better. It's the only way your work's gonna get better is if you keep doing it. I do believe in that.
Well, they say, a story is made three times, once when it's being written, again when it's being filmed, and finally when it's being edited. So, yeah, usually you hit the editing floor and forget any, and it's hard to, separate yourself from your darlings and shots you really like and parts that you film that you feel really need to be in there. But when you're editing it, you have to like basically throw all that out the window and just make the best video or best film you can make with the footage you have available. Not even following the script anymore. It's just how can we make this the best story
No, and
possible?
sometimes even being open to input. Like there's a shot I did that has a driving scene. And was it a little lengthy? Yeah, I was driving around a little bit. And somebody said, that movie would be a lot better if you cut out the driving scene. So I said,
Yeah.
okay, well that starts the film up. So what I did was, I have the video of me leaving the house, whatever, getting in the car, driving out, and as soon as I drive out, then I cut it to kind of where I find the pair of shoes, and it shows me driving along and finding, and I cut out about, like 2 minutes of me just driving around pretty much for no reason.
I think sometimes, and it's good that you're receptive to that feedback because sometimes people either aren't receptive or they don't ever receive it. I also am a screener for a horror film festival in Colorado, and um, some of these films we receive, there are lengthy parts that need to be cut. And that's not talk about our darlings, things that we really liked that we filmed, and is like, is it serving the story? Because if it's not, it has to go. And that's where that term "kill your darlings" comes from. Sometimes you can really like a shot, it could be a beautiful shot, but it's like if it's not working for the story, you got to take it out. Um, and yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. Sometimes people aren't receptive to that feedback, or if they just don't receive it.
See, I
Um,
cut it all out and then I call it a deleted scene and I put it
there
elsewhere.
you go.
So I
Yeah, you
figure
can have it somewhere else.
if I ever make a physical media or I'll upload it to YouTube, it's like deleted scene number 101 or whatever.
Or if
And
it's a
people
fun
can watch
idea,
it
you
if they
can.
want.
If it's a fun idea, you can slap it in the credits.
I mean, there's even some times that I've released the unedited versions of, shorts with its whole lengthy versions and boring and just wrote literally, or even done my own, commentary. I decided to edit this out and this into this because I thought this part was too lengthy. Because as someone that enjoys film and such, I don't mind watching those versions. I've watched working versions of many films, and I enjoy that because they are, not edited right. The sound isn't right. Things aren't right. Shots get cut. Things get, shortened. I was recently watching the working version of Return of the Living Dead, and what we got in the end was pretty different.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's cool to see that progress and where it goes because you're right. It does tell three stories. You write it down in script and then you film it. But after you film it, well, there's many different ads. I mean, look at that. I mean, look at that Halloween. There's two different whole versions that it makes a film one good and one bad.
yeah.
The director's cut was much better, in my opinion. The producer's
Sure.
cut, rather. I thought it was much better, in my opinion, and made the story much more and easily understandable for Michael Myers rather than what we got in theaters.
Yeah. And, to your point, talking about sharing these ideas through commentary, making a commentary track. That's something else that's being lost with streaming. We don't get commentary tracks anymore of the filmmakers talking, and that's, as creators, it's nice to be able to get a peek behind the curtain to help understand why they do, what they originally envisioned, why things ended up the way they did. So you're talking about director's cuts. I think a lot of times those might be accompanied by that commentary where you get to hear their thoughts on why they wanted this or why it was cut or why, whatever it might be. But it really does help, I think, as a filmmaker and a creative to know these decisions that are being made. And then it's nice too, these commentaries, because we don't really get to know any of these directors very well, right? We don't get to hear their personalities. We don't get to see how they respond to questions or what they're thinking. So it's really insightful to hear what these people you might admire, what they're thinking, where their heads at.
I mean, just in form of what you can do on a budget, and I know it's not the same budget, but like I learned a lot just from listening to people like George Lucas and Star Wars stuff because his first film, he worked on a budget and he did a lot of stuff using micros and other things that people just weren't doing. They were very innovative at the time. But again, it looked good for that camera, for that angle,
Mhm.
for that shot. And that's all it taught you a way to film that. Well, you just need to film for the box, not the whole room.
Mhm.
That whole room don't have to look like a motel, just what you're filming.
Well, and that's funny you say that because we filmed it down here in my basement. Let me see if I can tilt it over here a little bit. This right here is like my daughter's like play kitchen, and it was there the entire time we were filming. But it wasn't ever in frame or anything, so you never saw
Yeah,
it.
and that's what you realize is what's in frame.
Yeah,
It's
that's all that
important.
matters. Yeah.
And working with what you got for space, working what you got, and how can you make things bigger or smaller? How do you make a world? He showed a lot of, obviously his movies have a lot more effects than I would be using, explosions and stuff, but he showed how things were done on
Yeah.
the micro level. To make it look like it was being, done. This was way before, VFX too. He went back and fixed everything with VFX, but his original films had a lot of practical effects.
Yeah. Well, like you said, I think I'm probably more in the practical effect camp. I just think practical stuff tends to look better. And that's not to say CGI can't look good. I just feel like CGI, man, it's quickly becoming a lost art.
I
I
like it, A,
cannot
for like
believe.
intros, or you want to do lettering, you want to do
Mm.
something. I don't know. Like I said, if I'm making a scene, let's just say, and I need blood splatter, like, is it really that hard to splatter more blood myself instead of using a CGI splatter? I
Right.
mean, I can see it in quick action scenes. You see gunshots and stuff, and people use these little fucking bursts of blood. But yes, that's fine because you're seeing these people get shot. They're down. You're not seeing them again. But in horror, most of the time, you need to go back and see the wound.
Yeah.
And to see the wound with the special effects, it's more harder. It's more harder to sit there playing with tracking than it is just to do the physical effect. I mean, just to even track, if you were to try to track the candy cane scene, it's like you'd have to match every move this guy makes with that candy cane and make it really look like it's in there. And again, how much blood is too much blood? And VFX tend to go overboard with blood.
Oh
The
yeah.
coloring isn't right.
Yeah. And it feels just outside of the world. It doesn't feel like it belongs.
No, some movies I don't mind it in. Like I believe it does have a legitimate purpose in science fiction films and action films. I believe it can save time, and it just, again, you expect it to be there. These big explosions, maybe yes, okay, you can VFX it, but in horror, I don't know. I feel like the kills should be kills, otherwise it's not going to be so scary.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it just feels the practical effects feel and when they are real, more real.
I mean, some movies
There
do
you
it
go.
right. Don't get me wrong. Like the new It used a lot of effects, Pennywise and
Yeah.
Derry, but it worked in that. Granted, I love Tim Curry's version, and I think that movie has its own scariness to it because of the way they did the effects.
Yeah. I
But
think I think breaking point for me is when it takes you out of the story. When you're watching and then you get to a point where you're like, "Oh, this is all CGI, or this is all green screen. You know, you're talking about Pennywise, Welcome to Derry. A lot of that was done on green screen, and it just felt very obvious when they were on a green screen, and you know, interacting in that regard. So, um, it took I'd say watching that, it did take me out of the story. Did it ruin the enjoyment? I don't think so. I still really liked the series, but it did. You know, I when these things happen, you know, it shows the wide shot of the city. It's like, oh, that's fake. Or you know, it shows the CGI baby flying bat thing. I'm like, oh, come on, like, you know, certain things I did find myself asking why they didn't do it practically. Like, why didn't they do this for real?
Time, probably, and money, and it's a
Yeah.
TV show. It was maybe the budget wasn't there. I don't know,
I mean,
or maybe people
HBO, they
wouldn't.
probably
You
had a
know,
budget.
with TV shows, I feel like some people are just like, okay, we'll throw in a little effects here. Maybe they won't realize it. Maybe they won't know. I mean, the baby bat boy from hell still scared people.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt he was still scary. And I think too, like people are maybe more forgiving with TV. Um, and I think people are more forgiving with independent films for the most part. They're more forgiving because they acknowledge and know, you know, you, me, others are trying. Um, it's almost a compliment when people maybe give a negative comment about certain practical effects that you or I might do. Um, I say it's a compliment because there's no way we're going to match Hollywood. So, you know, like,
Well, no,
did we
I mean,
try? Like
I'm
you
not even
saying,
going to be
like,
able to match a mid-tier, independent filmmaker. I don't got 20,
yeah.
$30,000 right now to play with.
Well, and sometimes, you know, independent filmmakers, we can do better than Hollywood. You know, we look at talking about Star Wars. There was somebody that was doing de-aging like Mark Hamill for Luke Skywalker, making like a CGI version of him. And they ended up, I think, getting hired on by Disney to join and help them do some of these effects a little bit better, right? Because it's like it's crazy to think, you know, nowadays we have computers that we can have at home that can surpass some of these things that Hollywood is doing. Um, just more accessible. But you know, that's a good thing too. You know, I think a
Well, it's
lot of
all
filmmaking
accessible. I
is
mean,
more
even right
accessible.
now, making the independent film is accessible. I mean,
Yeah.
back in the day, you'd have be filming on film stock, and a film camera with film stock was very expensive.
Yep.
It wasn't something you could buy for $1,500 to $3,000 and shoot a good looking film. And you can shoot a good looking film with a $1,200 camera and some nice lenses.
You know,
You you couldn't do
the
that before.
I think the most important thing, and the more I get into filmmaking, you know, all these short films, music videos, hopefully a feature someday. I just keep learning, and I think the most important thing um, over your camera is set design and more importantly lighting. I think your lighting, having good contrast between the light and dark areas of your scenes, is what is going to make your film look more cinematic. Unless, of course, Cookies for Christmas, where you're doing like a flat lighting because you're trying to mimic Hallmark movies. But yeah, whatever you're doing, I think lighting is going to be key.
Well,
And
yeah,
you
I mean,
don't,
I think Italian Giallo's taught us that. I mean, the lighting is almost everything. It can change
yeah.
the whole perception of a movie. It can
Oh
make
yeah.
a movie.
I think anytime somebody's asking like why doesn't my footage look cinematic, it's probably going to be lighting because we talk about depth of field and bokeh. Those things can help, but still like somebody can have those things and it does not look cinematic, and it's because it doesn't have good uh, light contrast between those light and dark areas, and it's surprisingly easy. It is a little bit, I think, you know, we think about filmmaking. There is some gatekeeping, but it's becoming more accessible. There's a lot of tutorials and things online on YouTube where you can learn. And I think anybody that wants to learn, pick a shot from a movie that you really like. Pick that shot. just get a still frame, right? Try to match it as best as you can. And then if you're in a film community, you have some friends that are in filmmaking. There's Facebook groups, whatever it might be, Reddit groups, YouTube channels. You reach out to people. You say, "Hey, can you talk with me about this? Right, here's the picture I was trying to match. This is what I did." And then you guys can talk about why these don't look the same, and then do it again, and just slowly you start inching closer to where you're going to get to a point where you do line up with what you're trying to achieve. And I think honestly, it's all lighting, because you can get this look with your cell phone now.
Yeah,
It's just a
people
matter
made
of,
features with cell phones that are being distributed. I mean, it happens.
yeah. So I think when you're talking about um, filmmaking being more accessible today, I mean, a cell phone, this camera is better than any of the, film cameras that are, 50, 60 years old. Um, your cell phone's going to be a better resource than anything like that. So, I don't think we can use, I don't have a camera as an excuse anymore. It's like, gonna have to figure out something else to start saying you can't make a film for. But yeah, I think lighting
Yeah.
is so important, and then of course audio. I'm in post production right now, and I think in filmmaking you go in waves of really loving your project and then really hating your project. Right now, I'm kind of maybe at the bottom of hating. I'm about to start really loving it again. And I think what'll make me start loving it again, because I'm in the edit, so the audio, it's all disconnected because I haven't laid the room tone underneath to kind of connect everything. So it just sounds terrible. So I think, like I said, I think I'm about to start loving it again once I get that room tone in there. And it just sounds a little bit more connected. It doesn't sound like a whole bunch of jarbled up pieces of audio. But yeah, audio is super important as well.
Audio is very important. Bad audio can't be fixed. Like if you don't have a good audio when you're filming, and even in post production, it's hard to get good audio if you didn't audio it right.
It makes me think about I think it's the end of this year, the Odyssey. Christopher Nolan's supposed to be coming out. And of course, he's big on those IMAX cameras. I heard they're very, very loud. So I don't know how they record dialogue with these IMAX cameras, because I'm thinking they have to do it all in like post, where they have to have people come in and have to ADR it. They have to re-say the dialogue into a microphone that's not being drowned out by this camera.
That's a good question,
I
actually.
don't know how loud they are. I just heard that they're loud. I'm like, well, how loud is loud? Like a lawnmower? Right? That's pretty loud. Like you're not gonna
That's loud
break
enough
down.
to muffle sound of people talking.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably gonna almost certainly be picked up. But we talk about technology, and there's like some crazy stuff out there nowadays that can really reduce noise. DaVinci, man, it's hard to keep up. DaVinci is I love Blackmagic. I have a Pixix 6K, which is brand new to me. I've been filming on Pocket 4K for a long time.
Yeah, I use the
So
Pocket 4K. I like the 4K Pocket.
it was bittersweet switching over to the Pixel 6K, because it feels like you're betraying yourself a little bit. This little camera's been with me for so long. But talking about DaVinci, they are so on top of their game, releasing updates and Resolve, and it's hard to keep up, man. It feels like every time I update Resolve, I log back in and they say there's another update, and some of these audio features, with noise reduction and voice isolation and things like that, they can really fix some terrible audio nowadays.
Yeah, it's kind of wild what audio, what programs can even do with a baseline, what they've added in, what they've done to kind of keep up with other programs.
And I
I
think
do like
that's
my
that's the
Blackmagic
hard
4.
part.
That's what I mean, I've only had it for a couple of months, but that was my first cinematic camera. I got a couple scene lenses and just I've been filming with that because I feel like it isn't too complicated. It's easy enough for me to use and it's very easy for me to edit
Yeah,
because it
we
does just
talking
kind of
about
the just goes. And 4K right now is plenty for me. I don't need 6K. I don't.
I think it's plenty for everybody. I think aside from like having the option to punch in, right? We're talking. I think where they have I think it's like 17K. Blackmagic has like a 17K camera. Ridiculous. Like, how can you even? What kind of SSD
Billboards.
would you need? Like 8 terabyte to get like 30 minutes of footage? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean that's where we start to get to memory issues. I mean, I even have trouble running with like. Sometimes I do use my iPhone because the iPhone has a black magic camera, and if you
Yep.
set the iPhone, if you set everything right, you can mimic the two.
Hmm.
But when I film on my phone, I mean, I'll film again in log, and the data in the memory gets eaten up very fast. 256 gigabytes goes like
Darn.
that.
Yep.
So I can only imagine that's in 4K. I can only imagine six or even you're talking in higher numbers. And maybe someday we'll have that on a TV, but right now, I mean, even in cinema, if you go to the movie theater, it's only 2K.
I don't know if it matters so much. I think the human eye can only perceive so much anyway. I say like we're talking about like 17K. Our eyeball can't read that.
No, you might as
So I
well
think
just
the only
wear a
benefit is
special
like
lens.
punching in. You can really zoom in with that. So it does help, and that's one reason I want to get the 6K is so I can save myself a little bit. And this is not best practice. You should, when we're talking about framing and composition, you should always film. There's guidelines you can set on the Blackmagic 4K or 6K
Yep.
or whatever it might be. I would always encourage you to set those to give yourself a little bit of a buffer in case something does go outside of what you have. Um, but then also you have the opportunity to punch in and zoom in a little bit. So if you don't have a close up of somebody's face and you need it in that moment, well, if you have that little bit of extra resolution, you can probably
It doesn't
go in a
get it.
little
The
bit.
6K turns into a 4K or a 3.5K or so rather than like a 1K, which looks terrible.
Well, and I think so many people nowadays are living on their phones. So, we're watching YouTube or whatever it might be. A lot of times that's just HD. It's just 1080p, if not 720p. So, and when you talk about compression of YouTube and other streaming resources as well, eh, I mean, I think 1080p is, I think, even fine. It's completely fine. And the thing is, story, especially in filmmaking, I think story is king. So it doesn't matter how good it necessarily looks. You need a good story.
Well,
Otherwise, it's
yeah, I
not going
mean,
to
at
keep
the end of
people's
the day, I
attention.
mean, you could have your 4K version, but if you also have the VHS version, I'm gonna watch that in what, 420?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a good story, I'll watch it. I'll watch it, and we do. We go back, we rewatch movies from the '70s and '80s. Talking about Friday the
Really,
13th. We'll go
I
back and
watched
rewatch
still
that.
Nosferatu and other older horror films that are filmed in the 20s and 30s. And why? Because they're entertaining, but it also shows a piece in cinematic history. They didn't
Yeah.
have 4K cameras, but they still had movies that succeeded.
What do you think was the resolution on Nosferatu when they filmed it?
I mean, who even knows? 100 maybe?
Yeah, like really bad. I don't know. I don't know
I
what
mean,
kind
I'm
of
thinking,
camera they
well, we
used.
had VHS was what, 420?
Yeah,
So I
I'm
mean,
thinking. They had to like those cameras. We talk about IMAX cameras being loud. I feel like those cameras had to be really loud. They didn't really have audio back then,
no, they
so
had
they
no
probably had to
microphones like we have today. So I mean,
they're probably really loud. I don't know.
that's
Things
why a
things
lot of
are.
older films you hear projectors still in the background, a little
Mhm.
ticking sound. Why? They couldn't get rid of the tick.
Couldn't get rid of it. Yeah.
I'll add those in sometimes if I want to really age something and make it older. I'll add that little kind of annoying tick because it's something that you couldn't get rid of because the equipment was so loud and you had no way to isolate the audio.
Yeah, those little pops and little clicks and things like that.
But it all
That's
kind
it.
of adds in, especially if you get like you make a scary found footage film or something. I always like to grade it to an earlier time period where things were scary. Like to me, 70s and 80s and 90s are scarier because we didn't have the access of cell phones. So if you get lost somewhere, you didn't have like, oh, let me just pull out my GPS and find like you had to pull out a paper map, and there was all sorts of things.
Yeah,
And there was no accessibility if you couldn't get to a phone to call 911. Well, you just didn't have it in your pocket.
yeah, yeah. So it's a lot more real. We think about now. Maybe trying to make that connection if we're watching a horror movie, you'd be like, oh wow. If this was now, we wouldn't have access to, like you said, calling the police or calling for help, asking for help. Don't know where you are, you get easily lost. You got to trust the kindness of strangers, right? When people are asking for help and they get in somebody's car, they don't know who they are.
But it was still a time where strangers could get picked up. Hitchhiking was still relevant. People did it.
Yeah.
And
And
so much
then,
has changed. It's like, okay, well, if you go back, it was almost like the Wild West in a way. Things were just like, you could get scary anywhere because anywhere could become isolated very fast.
well, and we think
Nowadays, not
about
so.
like kids as well. Like, back in the day, you were a kid, you just go outside all day and be back when the porch lights come on, and that was it, right? Like,
Yeah.
parents had no idea where you were. They didn't know you were down there at the quarry and poking a dead body with a stick or something. They had no idea what you were doing, right? And they just
No, no, no,
trusted you to
none.
come back home and do what you're supposed to do.
But they realized you were safe. Everybody was safe for the most part.
Used to be a lot
Everybody
different,
came home
man.
at dinner time.
Everybody used to keep their front doors unlocked, all that jazz. So
Oh
world has
yeah.
just changed, for probably the worse.
In
It's
some
hard to
ways,
say,
yes. I
but
think we lived in a lot, it might have been cruder times, but in a lot of way it felt like safer times.
yeah,
And again, there was a lot more, I guess, niceness or trust or people just talkative. Like I said, people, how was your day? How was your weekend? What did you do? People were just more talkative. Friends would come over, people would stop by. That doesn't really happen unless you get that phone call or a text message before the phone call. You don't even
yeah,
get the phone call now. Now you get the text, then the phone call. A lot of the personable stuff is gone with today's technology. Even movies, like you very rarely watch anything with friends, anymore, or go out anymore, or you know, order like I mean, we like to watch wrestling and fights and boxing. We don't really do that anymore. Like people stopped
making
the
events. Yeah, used
all
to
the
be
gatherings. And it's not
everybody
just
would get
age, because other
together.
people, other things happen. It's just like I said, people don't want to get involved or just kind of want to be by themselves. Or they want to do everything remotely. Remote has become a big thing. Everybody has these, online groups and they get together online and everything's just done like this, like we're doing here. And if this was 20, 30 years ago, we would be sitting in a room somewhere, or I would have had to fly to you, or we'd be doing an interview that way, or it wouldn't have happened at all. And in some ways, this is a great way to get to know people and have, people talk. You can come on and talk about your show, which you couldn't have done, years ago. We wouldn't have been able to have this technology to even have these remote meetings that could be broadcasted. So in a lot of ways it's good, but in a lot of ways it's taken away, the personable part where people doing in-person things. So it's kind of a
Yeah,
double-edged sword in a lot of ways.
yeah, yeah. I mean, technology is good and bad. I think I'm trying to use it for all it's worth, all the good I can get out of it.
Oh yeah, I mean it is a tool at the end of the day. You still need a human mind to run it, but it's a very valuable tool. And if you use it right, you can get far with it. We are just about at time. Where can people find you on social media if they want to look you up? I know you have the YouTube if you want to give them that, and you do like Facebook and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, so Instagram is probably the best place to reach me for film stuff at AJPRJR. YouTube, I just changed my handle on YouTube. I don't even know what it is. If you YouTube my name, Adam Raynes, I should come up. Also on Letterbox. So if anybody's watching this, if you go check out Cookies for Christmas, it's on Letterbox. Leave a review, hopefully good. If you didn't enjoy it, maybe you can at least write a review that'll make me laugh.
I don't know what
But
to not honestly. I don't know what to not to enjoy. It's everything you want about a Hallmark film with the perfect ending.
I describe it as the perfect film because if you love Hallmark movies, you're gonna enjoy it, and if you hate Hallmark movies, you're gonna enjoy it. It's
And
those are the
either
two
way, it's a
camps of
good.
people:
It's
love or
e-
hate Hallmark.
and either way, it's a good Christmas story. So I mean,
This is a fun.
uh,
I think it's a fun ride.
it is. It's a
It
fun
is an
movie. It's
independent
worth a
film,
watch.
so anybody wants to check it out, I appreciate you supporting independent filmmaking and horror filmmakers at that. And thank you very much for talking with me tonight and letting me join you.
Awesome. Anytime. And let me know if when you get some future projects going. If you do other films, shoot me some info. I'd love to see what else you do. If you ever do a feature or if you're ever into collabs or anything, let me know. I am around. And if you ever need anything else to talk about, you can always come on. I love to let my platform be a place for people to come on and share their, creativity and what they put out into this world. Because sometimes it's all about just letting people know that it exists or getting eyes and ears
Yeah,
on a product. Not so
yeah,
much
no,
making it, it's
and
out there. It's just we need people to listen or see it.
I
And
sincerely
sometimes,
appreciate you doing that.
sometimes things get a little flooded. So I always like to let people come on. Thank you very much, though. And thank you everybody at home for watching as always. You know, check out some of these things, we talked about. Like I said, you can go to the website. We'll post links in the description as well, where you can find it directly to YouTube. And you can check it out. Leave some comments for the guy and give subscribe. Thank you everybody for watching. Stay
Thank you.
spooky.
Like and subscribe.